Let's have a start, though, by looking back on what happened last night in the Champions League. Two brilliant games. Tim, I'll start with you, and I'll start at the Bernabeu. Put your mug of tea down. He lifted it up and went straight back down again. Real Madrid and Manchester City, played out an absolute classic, didn't they? But City twice had the lead. They come back with a draw. It was good. Should it have been better?
No, I don't think so. I think they would take a draw. At the beginning of the game, they would have done. The way it panned out, some magnificent goals. I felt Phil Foden was just absolutely top drawer once again. Look, they're at the Bernabeu. They closed the roof. They had everything in their hands. They're a dangerous side. Vinicius and Rodrigo, they're top draw players. They've got Bellingham, Jude Bellingham there. It's going to be tough for them at the Etihad. I really believe that. I think it would be difficult for them to go through. I've got the favourites of Man City in my eyes, but you can't keep top-class players down for too long. They sat back, they got a counter-attack. They brought on Modric, who started ticking the ball over, controlling the game again. I thought they've got world-class players. A lot of them players you look at could play for City, and a lot of City players could play for them. It's a toss-up between the sides, really, and I think the difference are the world-class players like Foden, like De Bruyne are in the second leg, and the managers. I think that's where it comes to. It's both top-drawer managers, but I'd have to say that at the moment, Guardiola, because of he's still there, still present, still current, and I think I like Ancelotti, I really do, but I just think he's almost like a manager who just sets them out. And lets them go and play. I think Pep will have a plan for the second leg, and I think Man City will go through. Ancelotti
has Bellingham, Guardiola has Foden. You mentioned there, Tim. Troy, another wow moment from him. That goal, wow. No De Bruyne again last night, and not for the first time this season. Step forward, Phil Foden. Are we starting to see a changing of the guard, if you like, a passing of the crown from one to the other?
Yeah, and I think we're starting to see Pep's plan, long-term plan, come to fruition. So when David Silva was there, obviously now Kevin De Bruyne is there, but they never let Phil Foden go at any time. Phil was always in there. Everyone wanted him on loan. I'm sure probably Tim wanted him on loan as well at one point. Wouldn't let him go, learn, understand what we do, understand the Man City way. And now it's time for, they've unleashed him. Back part of this season, he's starting more games than he ever has. He's scored more goals than he ever has. And it's his team now. It's his team, and, he's earned it, and fair play to him.
Mm. And so back to the Etihad, Michael, next week. De Bruyne, who was ill last night, presumably will be back. Kyle Walker possibly as well. City haven't lost there in over a year. Put 4 past Real last season. It all seems to be stacked in City's favour. Is there any reason for them to have any concerns from this game?
And I think De Bruyne being back, but Kyle Walker will be important as well. That battle with Vinicius last year was fantastic. I don't think they scored a second goal yesterday with Rodrigo if Kyle Walker's playing. And I think that's been a bit unsettling for Man City the last couple of weeks. I know Stones was back in. But that game last night was about moments and the quality of the goals. Foden coming into the middle of the pitch, but Guardiola scoring off his weaker right side. And some goal from Valverde as well. Real Madrid seemed, in the game, Man City were really comfortable. But in moments, Real Madrid can really hurt you. And I think the game next week will go the same way. I expect Man City to dominate the ball. But with the two Brazilians and Jude up top, Real Madrid have got some arsenal to attack on the counter.
Mm. Only Phil Foden has played more minutes this season for Manchester City than Rodri, who's so important, of course, as we know, to City. But spoke after the game, Courtney, last night, saying he needs a rest. Does he look like he needs a rest?
To be fair, there's been a couple of moments, haven't there, in recent games where, he's giving the ball away maybe a little bit more. The Arsenal game is the one that springs to mind. Than he normally does, and he's probably right in terms of the amount of games, but equally, you're right, Rodri and Phil Foden are the two players for me that Man City can't be without. We talk about the importance of De Bruyne, but, a lot of the season, earlier on in the season, he was injured, they dealt without him, and the same with Stones, the same with Walker. Yes, would you rather have them in your team? 100%, but for me, the two players that you can't play without if you're Man City, especially with the running that they've got of Rodri and Foden. I love watching Foden at the minute, the way he's come into the fore. We were chatting about it a little bit earlier. We want to see him in the middle for England as well, don't we? We have to. I know it's a different system, it's a different team, but for me, he has to start in the middle in the summer for England and be influential the way that he has been for City this year. Yeah,
we were chatting up in the office, weren't we, about City and about Phil Foden in particular. Michael came in and he's got a statement to make on Phil Foden. We were talking about him last night being Premier League Player of the Season. Go on, Michael. What do you want to say?
What? That he's going to be Premier League Player of the Season?
No, you went further than that.
Yeah, I did go further than that. I'm a huge fan of Phil Foden. Not just now. I have been for many years.
Best on the planet right now.
Yeah, I think he is. I really, really do. I think he's the best in the world. The way he's carrying Manchester City, and we look around that dressing room of players, and Courtney just touched on Rodri there. I mean, phenomenal. De Bruyne, Silva, Haaland. One person, you look at Pep, the way he scored that goal last night and his reaction, for me, he's the best out there at this moment in time. For what he does, for that number 10 position, he's mind-blowing. And people say you got Bellingham, you got Mbappe, you got Vinicius Junior. For me, Phil Foden is the best in the world at what he does. He takes the ball up, he always looks to play forward, he takes it on his back foot, he's scoring goals. And Courtney, you touched on it. For England, we have to see him in a number 10. Or if you're going to play in 3 in midfield, we've seen him playing out wide for England. We saw him against Brazil, we saw him against Belgium. For me, he's not as effective as when he plays in the 10. I honestly believe, and sometimes I go overboard, I love the fact that he's just been at Manchester City all his career. And Pep kept him when people were talking about him going out on loan, myself probably included, when I was still playing, thinking he's got to go out and get experience. Wow, he didn't need any experience. He's playing with the best players in the world, week in, week out, day in, day out, and learning from the best. And for me, at this moment in time, he is the best.
He is the best where he is on the pitch, says Michael. You can argue that Rodri is the best in his position as well in the world right now, couldn't you, Tim? What about this theory of him coming out after the game last night, though, and saying, I need a rest? How would that go down with you as his manager?
I just think he had the ump last night. I think because he gave the ball away maybe twice or 3 times. I think he's never done that before. I think especially early on in the game. Look, whether he wants a rest or not, he ain't getting one because he's so important to that side. And I think Pep would get him aside. And listen, you don't feel tired when you're winning every game, really. As we're players, a lot of us here, we've all played the game, you know. And when you're winning every week, it must be a joy to play for that manager and train every single day and learn. He's like I would be sponging that man. I mean, he is the best manager we've ever seen, and you want to be part of it. What about if he come out of the side and the side started winning? You know, when it's time for the trophies to be lifted, you know, you don't want to miss that. He gets straight
back in, doesn't he? If he misses Luton at the weekend, he's straight back in. There's no doubt about it.
Is he asking for the Luton game to miss? I don't think he's going to get a rest. I really don't. I just think perhaps if they blast teams away to get 2 or 3 up, they can bring him off. But who else are going to bring in? They brought Calvin Phillips to be a replacement. That never worked out. So who is it? Who's it going to be? You know, obviously he can put John Stones in there. You know, I think he could do the job as that midfield, but there's no one. He's the best in the world. He's the best number 6 in world football.
Do you not think he's got a bit of a valid point? He had a big long season last year. He's on for the treble again this year. He's kind of, he's probably got the ump, but he's also valid going. Knackered here. Played 65 games a season.
Yeah.
You know, he's knackered, and I think the way that the intensity that City play, I know a lot. I was at their game. I did Villa in the week. He's so instrumental to the way they play with and without the ball that he's probably going, do you know what I could do with us steamrolling the team and getting 10 minutes? So I think it's more of what you said, getting out in front against Luton early and then say to the gaffer, do you remember what I said? Get me in the ice bath as early as possible.
I've never ever had a player come to me and said I want to have a rest, and I wouldn't appreciate him doing that.
I know that's why we're here, mate.
The manager, correct. But the managers, Pep knows. He knows he's played the game. He's won things at the highest level. He's played in his position as well. He knows how important he is to him, and he'll be telling him that. And I think Rodri knows. I mean, Rodri knows the importance of him. To knit the group together, I just think he knows when to quicken the game up, knows when to slow it down. He always picks the right option, breaks the game up. He's a leader as well. You see him in that huddle before the game. He's the one talking to everyone. Yeah. He's the one galvanising everyone. I mean, that man comes out and says, oh, by the way, Gaffer, I want to rest. I don't know. I'm looking at him a little bit different.
Yeah, that starting 11 will be interesting against Luton at the weekend. Will Rodri get his wish? Or will he be back in the team? Back to the title race for City at the weekend, as it is for Arsenal. Their game was pretty good too, wasn't it? 2-2 against Bayern Munich. Michael, you know, Arsenal in great form at the moment. There were no away fans there. Bayern seemed to be in a mess at the moment. Was this a bit of a missed opportunity for Arsenal last night?
I think so. I think they'll be thinking that going into next week. But who knows? The game might suit them a little bit more in Munich where there's open spaces. What you saw last night was the speed and the quality of Gnabry and Sané on the wings and then Coman coming on. If you look at the Bayern Munich team and you don't watch him week in, week out, that's an outstanding football team, and it's the quarterfinal of Champions League. The league's already gone, as we know, in the Bundesliga. So for them, that's their best effort last night. And I think what you saw was Arsenal being a bit vulnerable in big spaces. But there'll be onus on Munich to attack next week, and maybe that opens up those same areas for Saka and Martinelli. I still believe Arsenal will go to Munich and score next week, and obviously they're going to need to.
By the way, Gnabry, news from Bayern today is that he suffered a muscle strain in his left hamstring. He's out, they call it, for the time being. But it seems to be a huge doubt for that second leg, which would certainly be a lift, one of the goal scorers for Bayern last night. In terms of Arsenal's performance, Courtney, they've been away from the Champions League for many years. Bayern are there every year. Did we see that a little bit in the performance last night? I saw Amy Lawrence in The Athletic put it very nicely, that Arsenal look all grown up in the Premier League, but are still growing up in the Champions League. Did we see that last night?
Yeah, I think a little bit. You've got to learn from your experience. I think we look at Arsenal from this season to last season. We've seen that growth in them from, when they didn't throw it away, but in terms of where they were for the amount of time in last season, then they've come back with a renewed vigour. They look more experienced. They looked more difficult to beat. So obviously you're almost starting a little bit again from the Champions League. I also think what we've seen is the fact that Michael mentioned it there. In terms of domestically, what Bayern have got to play for is nothing now. So everything, all the success and what they're pinning their hopes on is the Champions League. So again, in the week, they'll probably rest players. And when they go back for the second leg, it's all about that for them. So I think there's a lot at play. Obviously, Arsenal, I think, have got enough firepower. There's no doubt about that. But obviously, that man, Harry Kane, again, on the score sheet, he's certainly, I think, there's a few eyes with him because I think people thought, right, he's going to Bayern, that's a guaranteed trophy. And that's fallen at the wayside as well a little bit. So I think he probably feels personally he's got a little bit to prove as well. So him, along with the rest of that Bayern side, will be doing everything to make sure that the Champions League for them is a success.
Defensively, it was interesting, Michael, wasn't it? Because, best defence in the Premier League, Arsenal, this season. And yet we saw a couple of little wobbles there last night, didn't we? It looked a little unsure of themselves at times. Did that surprise you?
Yeah, sometimes you can look at this and go, they've been magnificent in the Premier League. And I think last night it was a couple of lapses in concentration, one bad pass, and then Sane was just magnificent. I think you've got to sometimes give the opposition credit. And I think Bayern deserve that. They come... Defensively, we were very solid, and can we hit Arsenal on the counter-attack? And Bayern were very good at what they did. And I never, ever thought this was going to be an easy game for Arsenal, as good as they've been in the Premier League. And I don't really put it down to concentration. And these things can happen in games, any moment in time in the season. So I think it was one of those things. And the penalty with Saliba, we can talk about the handball situation. All these little things play into it. And I just think on the night... It was a great game of football, but I think next week is going to be tough for Arsenal. I really, really do. I never ever thought it was easier. People say Man City and Arsenal, the only teams could win the Champions League. I never ever thought that. Real Madrid and Bayern Munich. Real Madrid, 14 times winners. I don't know how anyone could write that, and even write them off going to Man City next week. As much as I think Man City will win, you can never write these teams off. These big football clubs, as bad as they are domestically, and 16 points behind Leverkusen, they've been way below par. Unacceptable, really, in the Bundesliga. But when it comes to this competition and the latter stages, they know how to turn the performances on.
Yeah. And, of course, they've got that all-important equaliser from Trossard, so 2-2 when they head back to Munich next Wednesday night. Two cracking games to look forward to next week.